Okay, so we're going to be emulating what Warren did in the Produce Like a Pro video on how to use a single reverb plugin in the same way you would a single reverb hardware unit with multiple sounds, multiple sources going into it. So right up here, you can kind of ignore what I got going on with this meta group. That's just something that contains all my other groups and stuff in there. So if you don't know how to create a group in Reverb, sure, there's plenty of easy tutorials on that, but the easiest way to do it, everything is a track. So groups are tracks, sins are tracks, tracks are tracks. So what you do is just double click in my theme, dark gray area, just right here, just click, click, brings up a new one. And then if you have any extra ones below it, I'll make a couple other empty ones here. This folder icon turns it into a folder. And then these now go into it. The audio is also routed through them by default, so you can then use this to do global effects on whatever's below it. So this would be if you wanted to do your vocal group or your drum group. You create buses that way. And then if you want to, you can bus your buses together. Really not necessary to go too deep into it. You probably know all about that. So we're just going to delete this one and two empty child tracks that are with it. Now, onto the usage of the reverb and how this works. So I've created in here, we're going to expand this out, full size all of these, and then I'm going to drop this down. That's a subgroup, and you'll notice I have tracks, but they have no audio in them. That's because these are just to host really the delay and maybe any processing to the audio before it hits the delay. So this is Verb Vocals Amy, this Verb group. If you look at the FX browser, it just has the reverb. That's it. Nothing else going on there because that's our single hardware unit that we're emulating. Now, Amy's vocals here, we open up the FX tab. This is our lead vocalist. You'll see the way I just put a little gate and EQ on there because it sounded pretty rough. But if we go to the redelay plugin, what you want to do is set your wet to default, your dry all the way down, and then your length of time, both this first three sliders should all be all the way down at 0. Now, what that's going to do is make it to where the reverb essentially sounds really close. So what we're going to do is, let's go to the actual vocals here. So you see this is where the audio is actually hosted. And we're going to solo Amy. Okay, we've got Amy soloed, and we're going to hit play and see what she sounds like with the reverb.
Gone for so long.
And we're going to go ahead and mute the reverb.
Gone for so long.
Okay. Now, what I'm going to do is increase the length of time here, and you'll hear how it sounds like all of the reverb is moving further away, which sounds like she's singing loud against a giant wall that's moving away, and it creates a big sense of distance, even though the main vocal is still up front and essentially untreated for the most part.
Gone for so long, I had to be so strong. Sometimes I find just don't know which way to go.
Okay, so since this is our lead vocalist, we're going to make sure that we keep the time all the way down to 0. This isn't necessary. It is an artistic choice, but this keeps it as close to the reverb, as close to the listener as possible.
Gone for so long.
Now, when would we want to move this length of time further out? That would be on, let's say, the backing vocals. Let's scoot them up here. So Byron, Dan, and these are our backing vocalists. Let's hear their harmonies real quick.
Come rescue me. I'm falling fast and free.
Okay, let's hear them without the reverb. We're going to mute that whole group.
Come rescue me. I'm falling fast and free.
Okay, so now what we've done we have to continue using just this one reverb right here, the same one, just the verb folder. So we're going to close Amy. We're not looking at her reverb settings anymore. Let's go to the backing vocals and open up the effects window, and let's look at the redelay. So what we've done here, we moved it to 77.2 milliseconds. Again, these are both maxed all the way down to 0 here, but we wanted to create more of a sense of space. So let's listen to them with this time at 0, then we're going to bring it back up to 77.2. 77.2 is not a specific number, it's just where I put the slider to create a little distance. It sounds about right, so don't get hung up on numbers.
Come rescue me. I'm falling fast and free.
Okay, so they obviously sound a lot closer. We're going to bring it back in a second to make it more distant.
I'm running down like a river to the sea.
So it creates some distance there without actually changing any EQ on that, any of the, like any settings other than how long it takes for the audio from this group to hit that reverb. So let's go ahead and close that one. We've also put it on drums. You could probably tell that whenever if you were listening to the full track. So let's get the drums. We're going to solo those. It's a bit much. It can probably be brought down quite a bit in the mix. Let's bring it down in volume. Just sounds a little more natural. Okay. And with this one, in the FX window here, we went with 38.5 milliseconds. On drums, I would tend to use something shorter like that, just because it's going to give it more of a sense of presence, but it doesn't sound like you're standing on top of the drum kit at 0 milliseconds. So somewhere between that and the next level of vocals makes sense to me. Let's hear that all together. Let's go ahead and unmute or unsolo.
Come rescue me. I'm falling fast and free.
All right, so hopefully all that makes sense. Now, if you have any questions on how to do grouping and all that, again, there's plenty of tutorials, but I'm more than happy to make one. This is the first time I've done any kind of tutorial since, it's been a long time, so I'm pretty rusty. But I'd be happy to put a little more time and effort into making sure do one totally from scratch. If this doesn't make sense, just let me know. I hope you get it. If you don't, great. I'll try and make sure that you do one way or another. Have an awesome time. See y'all later.